All right, utter domination. I'll tell you why the Pelicans looked like a completely different team in their blowout win. They were up 50 points over the Sacramento Kings than they did in Friday's loss to the Clippers. It's a live Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go. All right,
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all, we're coming to you Sunday night. This is the Monday show right after the Pelicans beat the Sacramento Kings in dominant fashion, 133-100. They were up by as many as 50 points in this one. This is the fifth win in a row over the Sacramento Kings this season. This was just utterly dominant. The Pelicans did everything you wanted to see from them in this game. And after the loss to the Los Angeles Clippers, where they looked like they really struggled, it was a 111-95 point loss. To come back and bounce back like this tells you a lot about this team. And there's a couple of reasons why they looked entirely different. We're going to break it down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So let's get into this one, right? There's a couple of reasons why the Pelicans won. We're going to go over it really in the first two segments here. And this team just looked entirely different. So one is they match up well against the Sacramento Kings. If you look at Sacramento Kings fans, if you look at Matt George, who hosts the Locked On Kings podcast, someone go give him a hug right now because I think he needs it after the Pelicans played this. This one was so demoralizing for the Kings that Matt George, again, host of Locked On Kings, put up a poll for Kings fans that was basically like, look, if you're a Kings fan and you had the 6th seed, would you take the 6th seed, but you have to play the Pelicans in the first round, or would you tank? Would you tank to get into the play-in tournament to avoid the Pelicans in the first round? That's kind of an insane thing to think about. And that's a real question that got posed, which just tells you how much the Pelicans have dominated the Sacramento Kings in this one. And one game, after looking really bad to the Los Angeles Clippers, to come back and bounce back like this and have the right mentality was great, right? Brandon Ingram, I had the graphic for CJ since he was the leading scorer in this one. Brandon Ingram playing under 30 minutes, 15 points, was absolutely fantastic. And you could argue that he was the best player on the court for the Pelicans in this game. 15 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, just 1 turnover. He didn't need to impact the game so much with his scoring. The Sacramento Kings were double teaming him, something that the Los Angeles Clippers did as well. And he was just passing out of it, right? Just making the right play, the simple thing that the Pelicans need to do. And that was a lot of fun to see because it allowed other guys just to get wide open looks. And this team was ready for it. I want to get more into it in the second segment, the mentality, clearly watching the film, listening to head coach Willie Green and coming in well prepared. But I want to look at the good performances here first, but we'll get into the mentality and why they looked like a different team in the second segment of this show. We can also go a little bit longer. It's a live show. It's a Sunday. It's early. This is nice. So what we'll likely do on this show, just for a programming standpoint here, go through our normal 3 segments, then we can hit the kind of exit video we do. And then I'll stay a little bit longer, hang out with y'all, answer your questions, interact with the chat more. But let me know if you're an everydayer. If you listen to Locked On Pelicans Monday through Friday, I even forgot to mention that in the beginning here. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. So that's how excited I am after going up 50 points on the road, which is difficult to do. Think about that. This was so demoralizing for the Kings that they were actively talking about tanking in a hypothetical situation to get a worse seed to avoid the Pelicans, right? They've said the Pelicans just have our number. They're a bad matchup. One of the things that's been a theme after the Pelicans absolutely wreck really good teams, including the Minnesota Timberwolves just a week ago, right, was that they were also saying, oh, the Pelicans are just a bad matchup for us. Notice that that's the refrain whenever the Pelicans beat a good team. Teams are scared of the Pelicans, right? I see ABJ504 with the comment there, the OG everydayer, as I like to call him, at least on YouTube, commenting every single day. So every team seems kind of scared from the Pelicans because when they're clicking, right? They did this without Zion Williamson and without Jose Alvarado, right? Like, they looked really good in this one without those guys. The Kings were utterly dominated by Zion before in some of the matchups that they've had. Zion was the big reason with being the focal point of the Kings defense, opening things up for others. You didn't have him in this one. And to be able to go out and still completely dominate them with the guy that they tend to focus on, I think really says a lot about this team and kind of where they're at in terms of talent. There's a reason the Kings don't want to play the Pelicans without Zion or with Zion, right? Like, that is a terrible situation for them to be in. I don't think the Minnesota Timberwolves want to play this Pelicans team either, right? They've been sitting first in the West and they are beating up, on a lot of other teams, and then they lose to the New Orleans Pelicans, and that's something that really kind of scares them, right? There's so much talent here that if it does all click, this team can be very scary. A show we're going to do later this week, and maybe even in tomorrow's episode, is why you're not hearing the Pelicans come up in trade rumors, really, in anything sort of significant as trade season has started. And we'll look at trade targets and things, but we're going to start with, they're not being linked to a ton of players right now because I think they believe in this team and they're ready just to kind of go to bat with this team and see what they have as they get towards the postseason. So they aren't jumping in there because you have wins like this. You have wins over the Minnesota Timberwolves, that dominant win over the Los Angeles Lakers, right? One of the things I think you can say, and this is what we're going to focus on in the next segment as we get into the X's and O's of this game a little bit more, is that, well, they learned their lessons. They're growing. They're improving, right? Let's highlight a couple of other things here. We just talked about Brandon Ingram being excellent in this game. CJ McCollum coming out and being a straight-up flamethrower in the beginning. 30 points in this one, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. He was 7 of 10 from 3. Making his shots. The Pelicans have been shooting the ball hot as of late, and when they do that, they win. 54.3% from 3, 19 of 35, with CJ really leading the way. Trey Murphy in the starting lineup for Zion Williamson, 11 points. His shooting, and this is probably a show we're going to need to do soon. Trey should probably be starting over Herb Jones because the shooting is so needed. 3 of 6 from deep there, also with 5 assists. He didn't even really get it going until late, but you can see the impact it makes. The court gravity and the numbers also really speak to it. Dyson Daniels getting a role in this one, right? Making his shots, 14 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, looking really sharp too. When injuries come up to guys like Zion Williamson, it's a next man up mentality. They need to go out and they need to play. They did really well in this game, and that's one of the reasons why you saw Dyson Daniels play well. Then Jordan Hawkins getting early run. 3-point shot not falling. We'll talk more about him in the third segment, along with Larry Nance Jr. too. They both made a positive impact here. So this was a great game. We'll talk about the difference between the Pelicans and the Clippers. It's not just that shots were falling in this game. That's a big part of it, yes, but there was more to it. So that's going to be what we're going to talk about coming up here next in a live episode, the Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about Gametime. Look, buying tickets can be a pain, right? I went to the Saints-Rams game in SoFi Stadium, and I was kind of scared. You don't know what you're going to get when you buy tickets. Are you going to get good seats? Are they going to be a good price? Is there better value to be found later? You don't need to worry about any of that with Gametime because Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You get to see the view from your seat before you buy. That's what I did. I knew exactly the view that I was going to be getting. They show the all-in price up front, so it's not like you buy elsewhere and then all of a sudden it's double or triple in price because of like hidden fees and things like that. And with the Gametime guarantee, it means you're always going to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section in row for less, Gametime's going to credit you 110% of the difference. The other thing I just learned for a concert, you can buy parking for most arenas and stadiums in the country. So if you're going to another type of show where you want to park, get cheap parking that way too. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, breaking down the game, breaking down this team like nobody else does. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. If you're an everydayer right now, let me know in the comments down below. And we'll get to your questions in the kind of bonus segment. We'll do like a fourth segment here. We're going to do the normal podcast for people listening on Monday and on the audio side. And then after we do the third segment, we will get into your questions. I'll interact with all y'all in the chat. So save your questions for there. Just let me know if you're an everyday, or if you listen 1 day a week, listen 2 days a week. It helps support the channel. Keep it free and 5 days a week for y'all. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Another programming note. I teased this on the last show, and then, of course, life changes and things come up. With Fox 8 WVUE taking on 10 of the Pelicans games, they're going to be doing some pregame shows and things like that for it. They were set to do it this coming Friday, the 12th, for the game against the Denver Nuggets. I was going to be on the whole half hour of pregame on Fox 8. It was going to be really cool. Studio show. I talked with them about that. It was going to be a lot of fun. Then ESPN flexed that game in, so they don't need to do a pregame show anymore. And that's just kind of funny how it goes. So you'll see me on another pregame show eventually, but just not this one coming Friday. More on that as it comes up. So why did this Pelicans team, this is what I used in the open of the show, right, look so different from the Clippers? 111-95, Clippers beat the New Orleans Pelicans. They looked terrible in that game overall, right? 35.9% from the field, just shooting overall. This one, the Pelicans, 61%. Is it as simple as, it's a make or miss league, or is there more to it? And I'm here to tell you, look, part of it is they made shots. You're going to look better when you make shots, right? You're going to win games when you make shots. However, it was also just a very different mentality, right? Watching that game against the Clippers at home, the Pelicans on a winning streak, they tend to do this. They seem to almost just think they're good enough to sleepwalk through games when that's not the case for them, right? This is a team that hasn't proven anything fully yet. We like what we see. There seems to be a lot of potential here, right? But they still need to be a little bit more consistent, and that Clippers game was an example of it. I don't want to say they're getting like full of themselves or anything like that necessarily. They just need to do a better job of, coming out with the right energy, the right mentality, and all of that. And they didn't against the Clippers. This game, knowing that they were going to play a team that really wanted to beat them, right? You knew the Sacramento Kings from the in-season tournament game really wanted to beat them. This is a team that's been embarrassed by them already. They really want to beat them. So they came in and didn't let up and just didn't give the Kings a chance whatsoever to do that. Really took it to them. The starters had the right kind of energy that you don't always see from this team. And again, they were doing this down Zion Williamson, down Jose Alvarado, to, your best player, second best player, arguably. And Jose Alvarado, a key guy off the bench that brings the energy, knowing they were going to need to step up because they didn't have kind of your energy guy off the bench, was really impressive from me. But it's more than just the energy and making shots. It was how they created those shots, I think, which is what was so impressive about this one, right? Against the Los Angeles Clippers, and Zion left that game with a leg contusion, listed, as questionable for this game. I don't think it's anything serious. They doubled Brandon Ingram. They wanted the ball out of Brandon Ingram's hands, and it just disrupted the flow of the Pelicans offense. They didn't seem ready for that kind of defense by the Los Angeles Clippers, and it really got to them, and that's why they looked so lethargic and so awful in that game on Friday. They clearly watched the film from that game, and they were well prepared from this one, because guess what? The Kings did the exact same thing. They were doubling Brandon Ingram, and he was dishing the ball and creating for others. He had 7 or 8 assists in this game. What was the final number here? Let me pull it up that he had. 8 assists in this one, a couple of hockey assists. He easily could have had over 10 assists in this game, like no problem. He was ready for it, and more importantly, the other players on the team were ready for it, right? The person who should replace Zion in the starting lineup was very clearly Trey Murphy. That was good. The two-man game between Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, Brandon being double-teamed and then zipping a ball with some speed on it, right? Over to CJ, right in his shooting pocket, exactly where CJ was and knew to be, was exactly how you want to kind of respond to the lackluster game that you had against the Los Angeles Clippers. Look, that's growth. That's coaching too. It's not just the shots were falling, right? They were manufacturing really good, easy looks, not something that they did against the Los Angeles Clippers in that game. CJ's the only guy that took really multiple threes more, other than Trey Murphy in that one. Trey's shot wasn't falling, but they weren't doing a great job of getting him the ball in places where you want to get him the ball. Same for CJ McCollum to be open and ready for that. Same for Dyson Daniels, for all of these guys to know exactly where they needed to be to be the outlet for Brandon Ingram says coaching, growth, and that's not something that we've always seen from this team. So all of the criticism towards Willie Green, we need to give this coaching staff credit where credit is due, and they were definitely better prepared in this game. They came out with the right mentality. They had watched the film, and the game plan was better, and we'll talk about the defense in the next segment too. But when you have guys like Larry Nance Jr. that are in the right position and know to work well off ball, it just adds so much to this team that you're not getting in another way here. And you're seeing growth not just from the team and the players, but from Willie Green and others as well. So they came out looking like an entirely different team, but it goes beyond just the mentality. It's the preparation and the work you do. I guess that's also mentality with it. But they came out and they knew they needed to play really hard against a team that really wanted to beat them. And now again, after sending a message across the league for that dominant win over the Minnesota Timberwolves, you send another one here. To go up 50 points in an NBA game is pretty great. I'm laughing because the broadcast was great in this game. I very much enjoyed Joel Myers and Antonio Daniels. Antonio Daniels having the most fun with all of the assists from Brandon Ingram and just giving out plates, giving out food, everything here, right? And to just have fun on the call. I did like Joel Myers, and I was like, I don't think he realizes what he said in this one, which is just maybe funny to me. Maybe you'll laugh at this too. When they were up 40, he's like, when was the last time you saw a team up 40 in an NBA game? And it's like, well, the Pelicans recently, like 2-3 weeks ago, lost by 44 to be exact, to the Los Angeles Lakers. So it's not that uncommon, I guess, here. But dominant win by the Pelicans to come out and just kind of correct all of the mistakes that they had against the Los Angeles Clippers. Also loved Antonio Daniels, speaking of the broadcast. We just love him in general, right? But love that he came out and said he enjoyed the Saints running up the score on the Atlanta Falcons. Saints eliminated from postseason contention, which sucks, but pretty fun to hear that he enjoyed that last minute touchdown at the end there to run up the score, because I did too. Did you all enjoy the running up the score? I think that was really great too. Let me know in the comments down below. Also, go listen to Locked On Saints. Make them your second listen today. Ross Jackson breaking down everything black and gold there as they hit a kind of pivotal offseason, maybe making some changes. What can they do to be a better team than they were this season? So I think that's going to be a big show. There's going to be a lot coming over the Locked On Saints podcast. Final note on kind of the mentality here. Also, one thing I've noticed with the Pelicans that I do think tends to be good, that's been more recent with them than earlier in the season here. You know, when you look at that Clippers game, right, that's something that could kind of spiral you. I think that was a humbling experience for the Pelicans. But they've only lost back-to-back games one time since, where does it come to? Since November 9th or 29th. So for basically the past like a month and a half, they haven't lost back-to-back games. They've looked really good. They've played really hard, right? It was that loss to Houston, followed by the loss to the Memphis Grizzlies. That's the only time they've lost back-to-back games over the past month and a half. I think that says something. That says growth, right? You don't want to just look at those losses and say, well, they're aberrations or things like that, because that was a humbling game against the Los Angeles Clippers. And it's more than just, not having your shots fall, but to kind of like shrug that loss off and come out, learn from it, grow from it, is the sign of a growing team. That's what you want to see. That's a team that makes you scared when you get into a 7-game series with them. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see if the Pelicans keep growing like this, because there's a lot of potential. They also had a great game plan on the defensive side of the ball. I want to look at the defense for this team coming up here next in today's live episode, Sunday night, Monday show. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about FanDuel. The NFL regular season just wrapped up, with the playoffs around the corner. Basketball is fully underway here, so it's time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Any $5 bet, and that's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The Pelicans on the money line. Brandon Ingram to have more than 7.5 assists. You can do it all over at FanDuel. And that's why I love the app. It's super easy to use. They have all of the betting options that you could want. Live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab to find new bets that you're looking for. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays. So many more things. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. Again, that's $150 in bonus bets with a $5 bet, win or lose. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, coming to y'all like nobody else does, breaking down everything you want to know about the team, getting into the X's and O's, which we're going to get into a little bit more here. We just looked at that in the last segment. No one else comes to y'all like this. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Tell a friend about the show as well. And since this is a live episode, we'll go a little bit longer, take some of your questions after we wrap up this segment. I'm going to hit the kind of end screen here for YouTube, and then we'll keep going for a little bit longer, not too much longer, and answer your questions. I'll interact with the chat more, say hi to y'all, shout y'all out. It's going to be a lot of fun, so please stick with me a little bit longer here in this bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans and become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday. Support the channel, helps keep it free and 5 days a week for you. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, yeah, the Pelicans offense was great, right? Led them to a big win here over the Sacramento Kings. But it was also the defense that really fueled them, right? Is that arguably one of the worst games, if not the worst game of De'Aaron Fox's career? I do need to ask Mac George that. I'm going to kind of report back to y'all with what he says. They held De'Aaron Fox, who has added a pull-up three-point jumper to his arsenal, right? Hit it in the beginning, and then didn't hit another shot. Didn't get to the line at all. This is one of the fastest guards in the league. 3 points, 4 turnovers, 1 of 10 shooting, 4 assists, 2 rebounds. Oh boy, did he have a terrible game. The Pelicans were excellent defensively in this one, right? The wing depth that they have of Trey Murphy, of Herb Jones, of Dyson Daniels, of Najee Marshall, and the switchability with Larry Nance Jr. out there, all just really completely like flummoxing, flustering, whatever words you want to use here, De'Aaron Fox in this one. That might have to be the worst game of his career. That's also on the heels of earlier in the season, that second game they played against the Mavericks at home, where they just completely limited Luka Doncic once Herb Jones came back from injury and hadn't played a couple games before, and then did. And then just completely limited Luka Doncic. The Locked On Mavs host, Nick Angstad, who's with me in New Orleans, said that's maybe one of like the 5 worst games he's ever seen Luka Doncic play. So you've held Luka Doncic to one of his 5 worst games ever, and then might have just held De'Aaron Fox, one of the elite guards in the league, to maybe his worst game ever as a pro. I don't know if anyone can look up his points per, the worst game that he's had, but that has to be there. They just trounced this team in an exceptional way, right? You had Domantas Sabonis kind of do some damage, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, but it wasn't enough to win the game by himself, right? You limited guys like Malik Monk off the bench to just 6 points. He might win Sixth Man of the Year, right? You're forcing Davion Mitchell to take 3-pointers, which is not his thing. You just gave yourself the best chance to win by playing a sound defensive game plan. This was kind of the Pelicans unleashed in what they want to do. They limit points in the paint by that switching scheme. It's why a guy like Larry Nance Jr. is so important to what they do, that it allows them to prevent guys from getting into the paint. That same switching scheme, by the way, is something the Clippers employ, and that was a problem for the Pelicans in that game, that they couldn't just get that interior penetration right into the paint, into the basket, into the teeth of the defense, and it just really completely threw them off. And by limiting, this team, the Sacramento Kings, in a similar way, it just completely took them out of their rhythm, right? The Pelicans had just 38 points in the paint against the Los Angeles Clippers. That's not how they're going to win very many games. The Pelicans on the flip side in this one came in with the right game plan. Get the ball out of Brandon Ingram's hands to your right guys, but then when he needs a break, put it in the hands of Jonas Valanciunas, who nearly had a double-double in the first half of this game. Just a workhorse doing sound things, right? An easy 15 points, 12 rebounds for him, and it didn't seem like he was working that hard offensively to do it. What was playing good defense against Domantas Sabonis. So letting guys like Chris Duarte shoot when that's not who they really want taking all of those shots, right? Forcing Keegan Murray to take all of those shots from 3 when he can hit that, but he's not elite at that per se. 8 points just for him on 2 of 9 shooting, 1 of 6 from deep. That's a smart game plan. And again, the Pelicans just kind of utilizing their players in the best possible way. One of the things you want out of your head coach, right, is putting your players in position to succeed, giving them the best chance to have success. Look, Willie Green hasn't done that all season, particularly on offense. They did in this game, and then they also did it defensively too. That's where a guy like Larry Nance Jr. coming back and looking healthy is a difference maker for the Pelicans. The switchability he gives you to limit guys like De'Aaron Fox. If you switch De'Aaron Fox onto Jonas Valanciunas, that's a problem. De'Aaron Fox on Larry Nance Jr. is still a problem, but one that you can kind of handle a little bit more, maybe contain, and is better suited for you. So overall, their defensive game plan was just as sound as what they did offensively too, and it really just messed with the Sacramento Kings. Look, Sacramento only turned the ball over 9 times in this game. Only turned the ball over 9 times. This is insane, right? That's insane that you still went up 50 when a team doesn't turn the ball over. And they did. They forced them into bad shots that they weren't going to hit. Just 42% from the field for the Sacramento Kings in this one compared to 61%. This was game plan here coming to fruition and being exactly what you want to see from the team. So they came in and just played exceptionally well. A couple of other notes here. I'm happy we got to see Jordan Hawkins get some run in this one. 24 minutes. Look, Antonio Daniels said it on the broadcast, and I've always loved this, right? When he's like, there's no garbage time in the NBA. There is. But there isn't for a guy off of the bench to get those minutes and make them count, right? Jordan Hawkins got extended run against the Clippers, seemed to get into a rhythm as he started to fill it up in the fourth quarter there, so that when he came in this game with now no Jose Alvarado, now no Zion Williamson, which means guys need to get bumped up in the rotation, he was ready to make the most of those minutes in garbage time, right? Wasn't garbage time to him, it mattered, and he delivered. The three-point shot wasn't falling, right? But he was a positive in this game. 12 points, 5 of 9 from the field. He was getting out and scoring. So he made all of his other shots that weren't three-pointers, right? 3 rebounds, 2 assists, just 2 turnovers for the rookie to impact the game in other ways, I think is a really, really important thing, and it shows growth on his part. Again, this is a fantastic win for the Pelicans. Way to get the kind of mentality back. Way to come in with the right game plan, learn from the past game, watching film, going through a practice, knowing the best way to go win this game without Zion Williamson says a lot about this team. There's a reason teams are scared about them, and this is something we'll talk about in tomorrow's show. Let's do that. Look, there's not a lot of teams calling them. There are not a lot of teams linked to them in trade rumors and things like that because this team could be really good. Again, you don't get up 50 on an NBA team as a fluke, so that was really impressive, very fun to see. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. If you are on YouTube on the live show with me, we're going to continue for maybe 15 minutes or so. Maybe we'll go to the top of the hour here. I'll answer your questions, interact in the chat, so get ready to type your questions in here. I'm going to hit the end screen. Don't leave. We're going to keep going. Even when you see that, when it comes right back, we're going to go right back talking with y'all here in a live episode, a victorious episode of Locked On Pelicans as they beat the Sacramento Kings 133-100. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk trade rumors, things like that. Okay, we're back. Bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans. We can go for a little bit longer here. Let's go for about 15 minutes or so. That was a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of people putting questions in the chat. Bump them back up for me. If you got something you want me to answer, we'll take them here. If you're just an everydayer, let me know. This is when I get to interact with y'all, hang out with y'all, and this is where we can have a little bit of fun here with everything. But that was a good win. Or if you're just excited and ready to buy finals tickets, let me know. So we can do, as I wait for some of the things to come up here in the chat, a couple of the things that we are going to be looking at in the near future on Locked On Pelicans. One, trade targets. I think there are some guys they could go and get that I think would be like a real important piece to this team. I don't think they need to change much, right? Normally they're linked to like every named player in trade talks, and you're not seeing that here. And I think that's the Pelicans really like this team. So hopefully we'll see them kind of keep rolling with this group because I think there really could be something here with it all. All right, Old Baldy says, yo, Jake, how come every time there's a big matchup, I get excited about the team craps the bed? I mean, they've had big matchups that they've won too, right? That was a big matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves. They won that. The rematch against the Los Angeles Lakers, I think, on New Year's Eve was a big matchup too that I think they, could have not done well in, and they did. I think for the most part, they've answered the call this season with how they've played. Like, there's a good team here. They're beating top teams in the league. They're not only beating up on like bad teams, they're beating good teams. There just happens to be, a nationally televised game here and there that hasn't gone their way. Certainly, I agree with that. But overall, they still are playing pretty good basketball. This week, look, they got 2 national TV games, right? You have the Golden State Warriors on Wednesday, and then that Friday, the January 12th game against the Nuggets is on ESPN2. Then you go play 2 games against Dallas. There's some big matchups coming up. They've handled certain things well, I think, overall. Nola G says, Mr. Every Datter, love it, who dat? Jake, is the Gray television experiment, if the Gray television experiment goes well, can you see the team sticking with them next season or creating a sister station to broadcast games? I'm not entirely sure yet. I think when you look at some of this, and more will come out, I'll probably get more info on this in the nearish future too. This is an experiment. I think that's the best way to put it. The Pelicans, as I've reported previously, did look at bringing their broadcast in-house, creating their own streaming service a la like Clipper Vision or something like that. I don't think that's the way they want to go. I think the move is definitely put it on over-the-air TV for everything. So I think they'll look to try and keep it there. Just on a Fox channel, right, there's kind of benchmark programming they have, like Fox stuff, right? I don't know if like American Idol or The Masked Singer, I don't watch any of that. I don't know what's there. So you have to kind of wonder, can you preempt some of that to put it on a Fox affiliate like that? Or do you need to create another channel? And then everything that comes with that isn't the easiest. So that's something that I think those are the hurdles that they're probably working through with everything right now when it comes to kind of the broadcast stuff. Josh Darby says, I don't feel like we need to make a trade. I've always said that. Do you mean a big name trade, or what about tinkering around the edges? If you could add another shooter, right? If you could basically get like a healthy Matt Ryan, does that count kind of as a trade? Something like that. I think those are, things that you could look at. I don't, another backup big wouldn't be the worst idea to this team. Maybe a backup point guard I think could be good. I don't think they really need one with the starters, but someone just to kind of create for the second unit wouldn't be the worst thing either. Fluffy Ham, great name, says, any opinions on Jeremiah Robinson Earl, EJ Liddell, or Cody minutes tonight? I mean, they were good for the most part, right? Everyone was kind of good. JRE, went 3 of 4. Cody Zeller has been solid in the minutes that he's played. EJ Liddell, didn't really play or do much or contribute. So I don't think there's really anything to really take away from his minutes. But Jeremiah Robinson Earl's been finding very limited minutes, just not as a starter, not as a key guy. Cody Zeller, when he's played, has won his minutes overall, and I've been happy with what we've seen from him. You just don't want to rely on him too much. I think that's something to kind of keep in mind there. Joshua Reyes says, great game tonight. Absolutely. Zazich here says, okay, question. What adjustments did you see Willie Green make during the game that was better? Felt like his rotations inflexibility was part of the Pels, how the Pels lost so badly to the Clippers. We kind of went over that in the second segment, right? They clearly were better prepared. They had a better game plan on how to stop De'Aaron Fox and other star players. They also had a better game plan on what to do when Brandon Ingram was double teamed. And BI was ready for that. The other players were ready for that too. Sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, they're going to come in, they're going to double team you, BI, because Zion's not playing. You need to be ready with the pass. Other guys, you need to be the outlets for him and be there. So you saw that kind of growth, adjustments, improvements, I think, from this team here. So I think that's something that was good in this game. There was a definite change in the team. That's when I kind of adjust the title. Everything's going to really be part of all of this, because I think that's the biggest story coming out of this game. Ray Lusto says, trade targets aside, I'm still assuming luxury tax threshold is a concern. Yeah, look, you don't want to pay it for Kyra Lewis Jr. If you can't offload him and your team is a top 4 team in the Western Conference, I don't think you make a trade that makes you worse to just duck under the luxury tax. Maybe they will. I hope not. But the luxury tax, is something they're thinking about. They have a concern on. But it also might just depend on how the team is winning. If you pay the luxury tax because you move Kyra Lewis Jr., you get in a better player that gets in there. That's something that I think is worth it, but probably not for Kyra Lewis Jr. So that's still something they're going to try and figure out, but you don't need to worry about that till the trade deadline. So there's a little bit fine here. Mac2 Fleet says, the answer to BI double is as simple as shooting. I'm not sure tonight is indicative of us handling the Clippers' physical defensive game plan. I mean, yeah, a lot. Shooting's how you beat most things in the NBA, right? Like that's a big part of all of that here. I think again, guys need to be ready for it. BI needs to be ready for that. If he's not ready to be double teamed or they're not expecting it or whatever, you need to then make adjustments for when that's going to happen, and when that's coming, you can beat it. And they were clearly well prepared for all of it in this game, right? Guys need to be in the right spots for Brandon Ingram to be able to get him the ball. If there's no one around him because they think he's isolating, right? That's not going to lead to an open shot. You've got to have guys in position. It's arranging pieces, right? And they did that in this game here. ABJ504 says, listening 7 days a week. We know that, dude. I appreciate you as always. Old Baldy says, thanks, Jake. Appreciate you, man. I appreciate all of y'all just tuning in. This is a lot of fun. It's why we do this show. It's for you, not for me. This is a passionate fan base. I'm just happy to be part of it and get to talk about basketball, which I love doing, and sharing all of this with you. This ties to Nola G here. Jake, promise you won't forget about us once you go mainstream. We truly appreciate your insights and team leaks. I'm not going mainstream. I'm staying here. I like doing Locked On Pelicans. You can pry this away from me if you want, but not going to happen. I'm staying here. Don't worry about me. I'm going to keep hosting Locked On Pelicans as long as I possibly can. All right. Obata Jonas is in rumors, but his presence will mean a lot in the playoffs. Look, there's limitations to him, certainly, but he's been just a solid contributor. I said, maybe he is like untradeable for what he gives you, but with Larry Nance Jr. and them looking so good when he's out there because he's healthy, it does make you think, like, if you can really upgrade that position, what can you do? That's something we'll get into in this coming week and next week when we talk more about like trade targets, things like that. Hung Fam says, CJ been so hot lately, just don't give him the ball in crunch time. Look, you don't need to get in crunch time if you build a 50-point lead, right? His three-point shooting and early on in games has been really key for this team. Just being that kind of second in this game, third option with Zion healthy, exactly what you want to see from him. Love how he's working off ball a little bit more. That's the best role for him, so he's been good here. Dan Quinn says, I love Dyson Daniels. He was great in this game. Looked great. More of that. Make your shots and he can have a big role here. And when everything just looks easy, like it did, right? Just making the smart play, the right play, everyone being on the same page. He doesn't need to overthink his offense. And that was big in this game, allowing him just to be. And that's important here. Links Da Vinci says, do you think it's possible to have 2-3 Pelicans on the All-Star game? We actually talked about this in Friday's show. They weren't on the early fan voting. I don't know if you'll see any Pelicans in the All-Star game this year. Maybe Zion gets in through fan voting. We'll see. But this year they kind of seem to have the shine off of them. Go listen to that episode. But maybe it's a better thing that they don't have guys on the All-Star game. Just take some time off, get healthy, take a little mini vacation. And yeah. Benoit Robinson says, BI defensive mentality has changed a lot. It's contagious. He had that big block in this game, took a charge in the other game. I did a whole show about how his defense has been good. He has tried on that side. Look, when he tries on that side of the ball, what excuse does anyone else have to not do the same thing? I think that rubs off on Zion Williamson too. They have had a couple of games where they look good. BI continuing that stocks trend. Steals, blocks, kind of combos of that's been really good. So they are really starting to click and be kind of the best version of themselves right now. And that's why this team is playing really well here. Zazie says, did you talk about Dyson's offense? Just kind of mentioned it here. Talked about Jordan Hawkins in the third segment too. JPZ says, I said the only thing keeping the Pels from contending was chemistry between their stars. Allowing CJ to play the role he's playing now is perfect. There's a reason why a lot of us were kind of preaching patience with this team of like, they need to figure some things out. They need to do this. They need to do that. Because there's a lot of talent here and you're starting to see that really come into play. That's why people said, don't make a trade. There's a lot of talent here. Patience. It's not always easy to see that in the moment. I'm not going to go all Darvin Ham on y'all. Oh, if you want to go read about some bad stuff happening to the Lakers, his comments the other day were not being taken well, but I kind of agree with him to a minor extent. But it's a full season, right? Marathon, not a sprint. You don't want to overreact to one game, but as they've started to kind of figure some things out, and they definitely are, you're seeing the right kind of balance between all these guys, and it's leading to a lot of really good games right now, and CJ is a big part of that. Ray Lusto says, Dyson looking more and more comfortable on the offensive end, like he's not pressing and overthinking. Yep, that's just what I said. I think that's a real big thing with him. He's got to find some offense. If he can do that, this team can be very, very good. Josh Darby, Locked On Pelicans with Jake is always fun. It's always with me, for the record here, unless I have a guest on. So I appreciate you being here. West Bank Rick, my man, he says, my team every day. Love it. 99 Dog says, Trey in the starting lineup equals fire. We'll talk more about that, but I think they need to really start to consider that. Just not easy to drop Herb Jones, who's been a starter since, game 2 of his rookie year here. All right, we're going to wrap up here in a moment or two. Nola G, my opinion, CJ was the best trade of the Hornets Pels existence, a true leader that holds the locker room accountable and produces at a high level on the court. He's up there. It's definitely up there. I can think of a couple other ones. Carl Landry was like a sneaky one that was important for the team during a really weird time. That was key in the playoffs, even if they didn't win a playoff series. You could probably think of some other ones that were like significant, right? Like the original Tyson Chandler trade, things like that could really be like key parts of all of that too. So there's a number that you could say, but certainly that's a big one here. Dan Quinn says, who would be the best matchup in round 1 of the playoffs for the Pelicans? I mean, I think it's the Kings, right? Like the Kings don't want to play the Pelicans at all in the playoffs. So I definitely think it's going to be Kings, especially after a game like this. And the Pelicans have beaten them every single game this season. All right, that's going to do it for the bonus show here. Appreciate you all hanging out with me, sticking around with me here. This was a lot of fun answering your questions. We'll do more of these. We'll be back to kind of the usual with the Pelicans on the road. So probably more live shows, things like that. Maybe not as much this coming week with them being West Coast games. We'll see. Still might. We'll probably do it on Wednesday after the game against the Golden State Warriors. Makes my life easier when we go live too. So appreciate y'all listening for the bonus episode. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. I'm going to hit the outro video again. There you go.